Fate is an action role-playing game released by Wild Tangent Studios in 2005. It was released to critical acclaim despite its close similarities with the Diablo series, produced by Blizzard Entertainment. As a teenager, I remember seeing this game on the shelves of Walmart in the gaming section back in the day. I also have vague memories of one of my friends playing this title. He expressed enjoyment over the game, and it seemed moderately interesting at the time, but I never actually tried the game out back then. In this video, I'm going to give a brief review and discussion about the game, and see if it still holds up in the modern era. Wild Tangent Studios was a game development company founded in 1998. For 21 years, it operated as an independent company until it was bought out by Gamago in 2021, a company known for its MMOs such as Trove, Rift, and Fiesta Online, as well as a plethora of pay-to-win mobile titles. If you go to Wild Tangent Studios' website today, you will see dozens of cheap casual games advertised on their website, like Match 3 titles, as well as hidden object games. For that reason, Fate seems to stand out quite a bit in their catalog compared to their standard fare. The game was developed by Travis Baldree, who would go on to develop the Torchlight series, which would become Fate's spiritual successor. Travis Baldree was a man of many talents, who not only developed several games, but also wrote 2 novels and worked as an audiobook narrator for several fictional works. The game starts off with a title screen that hasn't exactly aged well, where you see a Hobbit cartoon-like character carrying an axe in that standard early 2000s animated sway. You can somewhat customize your character, but options are rather limited. However, I will admit that the music theme for the title screen is reasonably good and provides a standard Celtic medieval fantasy vibe. Despite the fact that this game is based off Diablo, the game carries a bit more of a childish and cartoon vibe to it. One might say it is the more Disney family-friendly cousin of Diablo. We start off with a little bit of backstory that describes the setting that we are playing in.
Since oldest living memory, the dungeon gate has stood in the heart of the old wood. Its doorway leads to infinite possibility, to subterranean lands fabled in stories and myths. Many adventurers have passed over that ancient threshold, some to find fame, glory, and wealth beyond telling, and others never to return. The town of Grove has ever been the safe haven at the dungeon's mouth, a watering hole and resting place for weary adventurers. Here great tales are told by the inn's fire, journeys are planned, and legacies are made. The minstrels sing of the great feats of heroes long gone, and statues ring the square, a testament to their deeds. After traveling many hard and dusty days, you and your faithful companion arrive at last in the fabled forest town, which waits beneath the long shadow of the gate. Within these walls lies the path to infinite adventure. It is here that you will test your worth, and perhaps find fortune and glory along the way. It is here that you will determine your fate.
This is the most exposition we will get in the entire game, and our character begins his journey in the town of Grove, situated next to an endless dungeon, which spirals endlessly downward, level by level. We are given one objective: to kill the endgame boss, anywhere between the 40th to 60th level of the dungeon. I'm not actually certain of the exact range, but after starting a few test characters, this is what I gathered. The town of Grove is the main hub of the game, where you will meet most of the NPCs in the game. NPCs serve mainly two purposes. They are either quest givers or merchants. The quest givers will give you a quest to go to a certain level of a dungeon, to either fetch an item, kill a mini-boss, or kill a set of particular creatures. All of them are randomly generated and will send you within a level of the dungeon that is between 1 to 3 levels below the level that you have explored. Merchants will sell you various items based on different categories. You have an armor merchant, magic merchant, potion merchant, as well as a gambling merchant. The gambling merchant is what it sounds like. You pay a hefty price for the chance of good quality gear, but periodically you will end up with gear that has a severe penalty on it. As you play the game, you will notice that this is a pattern where gambling is the name of the game. You will find yourself in many instances where there is a chance of success or failure. The same plays out with a local enchanter. Pay this NPC to enchant your gear to make it more powerful. However, you must be prepared to be unlucky and end up with a cursed item. There is also a socketed gear system where you can place different gems to give these socketed items additional power. Each gem has different skill bonuses depending on their name type. Now that we have explained what is available in the town of Grove, we can now talk about the dungeon in the game. This dungeon has essentially infinite levels that progressively get more challenging the further down you go. There are a variety of different monsters with different weaknesses and strengths to encounter as you explore. You will encounter a mixture of normal mobs mixed with 2 to 4 mini-bosses per level. There are also many barrels to smash and a variety of weapons and loot to claim as you delve deeper. Additionally, each dungeon level is sprinkled with a few fountains that will help replenish your mana, health, or stamina meter, which can be helpful in a pinch when in the middle of combat. You will also encounter shrines similar to Diablo 1, where you have the high chance of getting a permanent buff to your stats, thus gaining half of a level up. There are also fate statues in the game that will either provide you with gems or spawn a deadly boss that you will have to defeat. Occasionally, you will also encounter the traveling merchant who can sell you some emergency supplies such as potions and return to town portals. Or you may encounter the fisherman who will sell you various types of fish which can be used to buff your pet. And that is one thing I have neglected to talk about so far. One of the unique mechanics of Fate is that you are given a pet to accompany you through your journey. At character select, you can either choose the pet to be a dog or a cat. However, your pet becomes more useful when you are able to feed it different kinds of fish to temporarily change the dog or cat into a different creature. In my playthrough, certain fish would transform the pet into a unicorn, spider, salamander, or abomination, which reminds me a lot of the Beholders from D&D. With these transformations, stats are typically upgraded and the pet's fighting abilities become more enhanced, where they're able to deal either greater strength-based damage or magic-based damage. I mentioned you can buy fish from the merchant. Well, let's not also forget that you can actually fish in the game as well. And not only can you catch fish, but you also have a chance of obtaining high-quality weapons and loot from fishing, which can either be sold to make a lot of coin or used to make your character more powerful, depending on the stats it contains. This is a cool little mechanic that allows for a unique twist to the Diablo formula. This brings us to how stats work in Fate. There are a lot of similarities to the Diablo games here, where you put points into 4 main stats: strength, dexterity, vitality, and magic. However, where it differs is the use of its classless system. Instead of choosing a class like you would in Diablo, you choose a set of skills that you invest 2 points in per level. These skills are mainly tied to weapon skills such as sword, mace, or staff, but can also be tied to weapon stances such as two-handed, dual wielding, as well as increased criticals and magic. Also important to mention is that there are 3 different types of magic in Fate: attack, defensive, and charm. You can obtain and read different scrolls through either dungeon loot or by buying from a merchant, which will get you different spells attached to each school of magic. All these skills allow for a great amount of customizable builds, which adds to a lot of replayability potential. It also means that there's a chance that your build could suffer if you foolishly spread your points too thin. And unlike some gaming communities, I couldn't find a lot of guides on specific builds for characters online. So if you start this game new, you might kinda have to go in blind and experiment to see what works. Apparently, quick attack is overpowered in the game, as well as critical hits. If you can synergize these skills with each other, you can certainly kill things fast. Just be aware that the slow spell can potentially counter this. All I can say is that I found this build to be useful in my first full playthrough of the game. As you complete quests and kill signature mobs in the game, you will progress your fame reputation to the outside world, which will enable you to occasionally put some extra points into your weapon and magic skill, apart from the leveling process. Death is played out in a unique way in Fate, where you are given 3 options, each with a penalty attached to it. The first is that the Grim Reaper will heal you to full strength where you are, but you lose a chunk of experience and a decrease in your fame reputation. I found this choice to be the least of the 3 evils, as I was often put in a worse situation if the Reaper spawned me a level below where I was with even deadlier mobs. And the risk of losing all of my gold by being spawned 3 levels above and having to rush back to my gold within 20 minutes was a gamble that could potentially result in hours of lost fishing progress. Despite this, it was an interesting take on the death mechanic in-game, and can certainly be quite punishing, especially at higher difficulty levels. The general gameplay loop in this game is enjoyable, yet incredibly simple. Everything in this game is generated at random. There is very little story to speak of. You are given your main objective, which is to kill a boss on a random level, and given random pre-generated quests to either kill or gather an item. Killing monsters yields good XP. The goal of your character is to essentially dungeon crawl your way to the final boss. You do this by clearing each level, returning to town to turn in quests, resupply, and sell loot, and then dive back in through the use of portals, similar to the Diablo games. That is basically the game in a nutshell. Now, I originally thought that this would get quite boring fast, but one thing that makes up for the repetition is the monster variety. It seems that development for this game was focused entirely on creating as much monster variety as possible. This really keeps the game interesting, as every couple of dungeon levels, new creatures are introduced, and they never seem to overly repeat themselves. Now, I'm sure that if you were to play this game infinitely, that eventually things would begin to repeat. But if you only play the game for the purpose of getting to the final boss, the mob variety should keep you entertained the whole way through. There is not a lot of lore or backstory to this fantasy world to speak of, but a lot of the monsters resemble similarities to what you might encounter in a D&D campaign in the Forgotten Realms. Liches, zombies, beholder-looking abominations, spiders, slimes, kobolds, and orcs, to name a few. The bright and cartoony art design helps the monsters to stand out compared to other games in the genre that might have a more gritty, darker atmosphere. Melee attacks could be more interesting as you simply left-click on an enemy to attack. There are no dodge or controllable dodge mechanics or anything that might make combat a bit more engaging. As I said before, the game is simple, and that can be both its draw and its turn-off.
Your journey is complete.
Eventually, once you have defeated the endgame boss, you are given the opportunity to retire your character. When doing so, you can choose a piece of high-value gear to pass down as an heirloom. Following this, you can make a descendant character who is able to inherit this heirloom. This allows you the potential for endless gameplay where you can begin to explore the more challenging difficulties in the game. As you can do this endlessly, you could potentially create a very powerful character with the more descendants you have. While this is a very interesting mechanic, when I tried creating a new descendant, the game crashed and my new descendant character was nowhere to be seen. That was a bit of a disappointment for me, to say the least, as I would have wanted to explore this mechanic further. When looking at the graphics and art design, I found that they have aged quite well despite the cheesy-looking title screen. It follows a similar cartoony design to World of Warcraft, and so in general, it looks okay. The game has certainly aged, but the graphics don't in any way impede the gameplay. Another key component of this game that I really enjoyed was the music. There was an element of Celtic and New Age influences to be heard in the town of Grove, as well as exploring the dungeons. While tracks do repeat themselves, I found all the tracks to be top-notch and fitting for the setting. There was not a single track that I did not enjoy from this game, and I see how the music could certainly invoke a sense of nostalgia for the returning player. The gameplay can certainly become a bit repetitive, but I also found it enjoyable to play as a game that I have running in the background. Something that I can hop on and play with a half hour here or there at work, without needing to get myself invested in a story. I enjoy a lot of games that are lore-rich and story-heavy, but sometimes you find yourself in a situation where you don't want to read long lines of exposition and make moral decisions for your character. You just want to run in and kill things. And for this, Fate achieves its goal. Will this be a game that I come back to time and time again? I'm not sure, but I definitely enjoy the simplicity that the game has to offer, which makes it really easy to get into. I think I can conclude that it's not a game I would ever rate as my top favorite ARPG or RPG in general, but it's a good game to get lost in for a couple of hours every now and then. Another great thing about this game is that it's available on Steam. When the game goes on sale, I would highly recommend you give it a try if you want a game where you can spend a couple hours just mindlessly killing things, or if you enjoy games with a good fishing minigame system. Thank you for staying around for this gaming review, and I hope to see you in the next one. I hope to be putting more gaming videos out in the future, exploring a wide variety of RPGs. While I really have been enjoying CRPGs and ARPGs, I'm kind of open to exploring many different classic games, so feel free to like and subscribe if that's your thing. See you next time.